The private room at the restaurant was buzzing, filled with the warm glow of candlelight and 40 years of shared history. It was my parents' anniversary, and the whole family was there. I sat at my small table, a satellite in their orbit, nursing a glass of water. My father, Mark, a man who measured worth in grand gestures and loud announcements, stood up to make his toast. His eyes immediately found my brother, Kevin, the family's charismatic but reckless golden child who never faced a single consequence. To my son, Kevin, Dad's voice boomed with pride. He went on a tangent about Kevin's latest failed venture, an artisanal ice cube delivery service. He called him a visionary, praising his boundless entrepreneurial spirit. It was the same speech he'd given for the gourmet dog biscuit bakery and the app that was supposed to be the Uber for unicycles. As the family applauded wildly, I felt that old, familiar ache. It wasn't just the praise. It was the sheer force of their collective belief in a fantasy they all agreed to tell. Then, my father's gaze shifted to me, and the energy in the room dipped. "And to my daughter, Blair," he said, a little too loudly. He gave a slight dismissive chuckle. "We're not entirely sure what she does. I guess she works in tech, like Wi-Fi or something?" He raised his glass. "But she did get the router working for the party, so let's hear it for her." The applause this time was scattered and thin, pitying. It wasn't a celebration, it was an acknowledgement of my basic function. That was when the final blow landed. I saw my grandma lean over to my mother, Diane, a woman who mistakes her son's dependence for love. Her voice was a stage whisper that cut through the noise. "It's such a shame she never found a real passion. Not like her brother." My mother didn't defend me. She just gave a sad, slow nod. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It froze. The hurt and anger evaporated, replaced by a profound and terrifying calm. They hadn't just forgotten me, they had replaced me. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. It was just the loudest echo of a story I had been living my whole life. To understand the story, you have to understand the dynamic. It was built around one simple, unshakable truth. My brother, Kevin, was the sun, and I was just a planet caught in his orbit, valued only for my gravitational pull. He was the family's golden boy, a 30-year-old man who wore his charisma like a shield, deflecting every failure with a charming smile and a new, even more brilliant idea. My parents, Mark and Diane, were the architects of this universe. My father, a man who loved the sound of success, and my mother, a woman who needed to be needed, had poured all their hopes into him. They didn't just enable him, they worshipped the very ground his unfulfilled potential walked on. I remember one summer, 2 years ago, when this was all thrown into painfully sharp relief. Kevin had called a family investment meeting, which was just him standing in the living room with a poorly made PowerPoint. He was pitching his latest masterstroke, a revolutionary app that would connect dog walkers with amateur poets, so dogs could be walked while their owners received personalized haikus via text. It was absurd, a fever dream of an idea, but my parents were mesmerized. My father saw a future tech mogul. My mother saw her brilliant, creative boy. That afternoon, they transferred $20,000 from their savings account to his. A smart investment in talent, my dad had declared, beaming. As I watched the number flash on my dad's phone, my own internal ledger started running. I saw the community college classes I paid for myself, the decade-old car I kept fixing with duct tape and prayer, the countless times I'd heard the phrase "money is tight, honey." That $20,000 wasn't just money, it was the total value of every opportunity I was ever told we couldn't afford. The app, of course, never materialized beyond a broken landing page, and the money vanished into what Kevin vaguely called development costs. Not a single person ever held him accountable. Their logic, I eventually realized, had its own twisted consistency. My father could brag about a son who was a visionary. It sounded better at barbecues than, "My daughter has a quiet government job with a security clearance I don't understand." A son's spectacular failures were somehow more romantic and interesting than a daughter's silent, steady success. My mother, meanwhile, thrived on Kevin's chaos. His constant need for bailouts, advice, and emotional support made her the matriarch, the fixer, the center of his world. My independence was an indictment of her role. I didn't need her to fix my problems, so she subconsciously decided I didn't have any. This all came to a head the year before the app fiasco. I had been approved for a significant promotion, one that required me to handle highly classified data from home. The only catch was that I needed a specific, encrypted laptop that cost just over $2,000. It wasn't a request, it was a professional necessity. I sat my parents down and asked for a short-term loan. The atmosphere instantly turned icy. They gave me the lecture, the one about financial irresponsibility, about the instability of my computer hobby, about the need to be more practical. My dad even had the nerve to say, maybe if you were more of a people person like Kevin, you'd find a career with more stability. The humiliation was suffocating. I didn't argue. I just thanked them for their time, walked out, and applied for a high-interest personal loan the next day. I got the laptop, I got the promotion, and I paid off the debt with a silence they mistook for compliance. This was the false narrative they had all built, brick by brick. Kevin was the dreamer, and I was the doer. But in our family, this wasn't a compliment. His dreams, no matter how flimsy, were treated as noble and important. My doing, the actual work, the paying of bills, the building of a life, was seen as mere function. It was passionless, uninspired labor. My career in national security signals intelligence, a job that required relentless precision and analytical skill, was condensed into a single, dismissive joke. I was the family's unofficial, unpaid IT support. I was the one they called when the printer jammed or the Netflix was buffering. I was the girl who, they guessed, fixed the Wi-Fi or something. They couldn't be bothered to see the truth, so they created a version of me that they could understand, a version that made them comfortable. A version that wasn't a general. Lying in bed after that anniversary party, the echo of their pitying applause still ringing in my ears, I saw it all with a new and blinding clarity. The $20,000, the lecture about the laptop, the decades of being a background character in the Kevin show. They would never see me. They didn't want to. So I decided to stop waiting for an invitation into their world and bring mine crashing into theirs. The drive home from the anniversary party was quiet. The constant, dull ache of being misunderstood, an ache I had carried for so long I'd mistaken it for a part of my own personality, was finally gone. In its place, a cold, hard clarity began to form, like ice crystallizing on a winter window. The goal was no longer to win their love or to beg for their approval. That was a game I was destined to lose. The new objective was simpler. It wasn't about seeking justice or even revenge, not really. It was about forcing a confrontation with reality. I was done trying to correct their narrative. I was going to burn it to the ground. My plan began to take shape around an upcoming mission, a highly sensitive personnel extraction I was tasked with leading. Its code name was Operation Raven. For weeks, my team and I had been working around the clock, planning every contingency, mapping every route. The final piece of the puzzle was the formal go-no-go authorization, a physical package that had to be delivered by a secured courier exactly 24 hours before launch. My receipts weren't going to be text messages or bank statements. My receipt was a man with an earpiece and a locked briefcase, and he was going to deliver it right to their doorstep. The next morning, I was on a secure call with my commanding officer. He gave me the option of receiving the final authorization at the command post or a secondary secure location. This was my moment. I cited a few plausible, if slightly stretched, security protocols, the need to minimize digital signatures near the primary command site, and the advantage of using a randomized civilian location for a single critical courier drop to break any potential surveillance patterns. It sounded professional, logical, and detached. He didn't question it for a second. He just asked for the address. I gave him my parents' address. With the logistics handled, all that was left was to set the stage. I knew that every Sunday, without fail, my entire family gathered at my parents' house for dinner. It was their sacred ritual, the place where the family myths were polished and passed around like serving dishes. I picked up the phone and called my mother. I told her I knew I'd been distant, and I wanted to make more of an effort to be there. Her voice on the other end was dripping with condescending sweetness. "Oh, Blair, that's wonderful. It's so nice that you're finally taking an interest in the family." I just smiled into the phone. An interest. Yes, that was one way to put it. I had the proof. I had the plan. And I had the perfect stage. All that was left was to wait for the curtain to rise on their comfortable little world. That Sunday, I walked into my parents' house and was hit by the familiar smell of pot roast and complacency. The air was thick with the sounds of their life. My dad laughing too loudly at one of his own jokes, the clink of silverware, the low hum of a sports recap on the television in the living room. For the first time, however, the suffocating atmosphere didn't bother me. I felt strangely distant, like a sociologist observing a tribe in its native habitat. I took my seat at the dining table, a ghost at their feast, and simply waited. The calm I felt was absolute. It was the calm of knowing you are holding the winning hand, and you're just waiting for the perfect moment to lay your cards on the table. Of course, the performance began right on cue. My brother Kevin was holding court, regaling everyone with a story about a potential investor he'd met at the dog park. My father was hanging on every word, his face glowing with vicarious pride. My mother, Diane, refilled Kevin's glass and then turned to me with a look of benevolent pity. "So, Blair," she started, her voice laced with that gentle condescension she had perfected over the years. "How are things at your little company? Did you get those server issues all sorted out?" I gave her a small, polite smile. "Still working on it, Mom," I said, my voice even. I could feel their collective gaze on me, the brief, obligatory check-in with the quiet daughter before returning to the main event. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A single encrypted text. ETA, 2 minutes. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, a deep breath. The air in the room suddenly felt electric, charged with a secret that only I knew. It was time. Outside, the quiet suburban street was bathed in the golden light of the late afternoon. Everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. Perfectly mundane, perfectly normal. The stage was set for the final act of their play, but they had no idea I had rewritten the ending. This wasn't just about revealing a secret, it was about correcting the record with an undeniable, world-shattering truth. A moment later, a sleek, black government sedan glided to a silent stop in front of the house. It looked utterly alien against the backdrop of manicured lawns and minivans. "Who on earth is that?" my father mumbled, squinting out the window. The table chatter died down. My mother stood up slightly, peering over his shoulder. A man in a perfectly tailored dark suit and a discreet earpiece stepped out of the passenger side. He didn't look around, he just moved with a sharp, disciplined purpose directly towards our front door. Kevin, for the first time all day, was speechless. The family's confusion was a thick, palpable thing, a silence that grew heavier with each step the man took up the driveway. Just as he raised his hand to knock, I pushed my chair back and walked to the front door, opening it before his knuckles could touch the wood. He stood before me, his expression impassive, professional. He held a heavy metallic briefcase in one hand. His voice was crisp and clear, easily carrying into the now deathly silent dining room. "Ma'am, you're cleared for Operation Raven. We have a green light." He held out the briefcase. Then he looked past me for a fraction of a second, his gaze sweeping over my stunned, frozen family before returning to me. He gave a single, respectful nod. "General Blair," he said, "we're standing by for your command." The world stopped. I saw my father's jaw literally drop, his fork clattering onto his plate. My mother was frozen mid-motion, clutching a half-carved potato like a religious artifact. Kevin's face was pale, his confident smirk completely gone, replaced by the slack-jawed expression of a man seeing a ghost. Even my grandmother, sitting at the head of the table, had a hand clutched to her pearls, her eyes wide with disbelief. Their perfect, orderly world had just been hit by a meteor, and the impact crater was standing right in their doorway. They weren't just surprised, they were fundamentally rearranged. I took the briefcase from the agent, my movements calm and measured. This wasn't a performance for them. This was my job. "Thank you, Agent," I said, my voice steady. "Tell the team to proceed to staging. I'll be there in an hour." He nodded once more, turned, and walked back to the car as purposefully as he had arrived. I watched until the sedan pulled away, then I closed the door, shutting them in with the ringing silence and the rubble of their narrative. And in that silence, I didn't feel anger or victory. I just felt quiet. For the first time, I was the one who got to walk away. I didn't look back. With the heavy briefcase in my hand, I walked out of the house, got into my car, and started the engine. The drive to the command post was the most peaceful hour of my entire life. My phone, which I'd tossed onto the passenger seat, began to buzz incessantly. It lit up again and again with calls and a tidal wave of texts, a frantic digital screaming from a world I had just stepped out of. I didn't even glance at it. The noise felt distant, unimportant. For the first time, there was no internal debate, no guilt, no wondering if I'd done the right thing. There was only the mission ahead and the quiet hum of the road. Operation Raven was a success. My focus was absolute, my team was flawless, and we did what we had to do. It was only 2 days later, after the debriefings and the filed reports, that I finally sat down and looked at my phone. The sheer volume of notifications was overwhelming. There were dozens of missed calls from my parents and Kevin. The texts were a masterclass in deflection and self-pity. My father's were filled with exclamation points and confusion. A general? What is going on, Blair? Call me now. My mother's were dripping with wounded accusation. How could you keep this from us? We're your family. I can't believe you would lie to me like this for years. And Kevin's? His were the most transparent of all. OMG sis. A general? That is insane. We have to talk. I have some ideas. Ideas. Of course, he had ideas. His first thought wasn't of me, but of how my reality could benefit his fantasy. Their messages weren't apologies, they were indictments of their own willful ignorance, frantic attempts to rewrite history in real time and absorb my success into their narrative. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the screen. I thought about crafting a long, scathing reply, listing every injustice from my internal ledger, the $20,000, the lecture about the laptop, every dismissive comment and pitying glance. But what was the point? They weren't capable of understanding. So I opted for the simple, undeniable truth. I opened a group chat with the 3 of them and typed out a single, final message. I never lied. You just never listened. My life is not a secret. It was just outside the box you built for me. I am happy and I am busy. Do not contact me again. I hit send before I could second guess it. Then, one by one, I blocked their numbers. Dad, Mom, Kevin. Each tap of the screen wasn't an act of anger. It felt like turning a key in a lock, securing a door I should have closed long ago. A year can change everything. A year without their gravity pulling me off course allowed me to finally find my own true north. My life now is almost unrecognizable. I spend my days in a command center, not a quiet home office. I'm surrounded by a team of professionals, men and women who challenge me, respect me, and listen when I speak. We have a shorthand, a camaraderie forged in high-stakes situations and mutual trust. Here, my competence isn't intimidating, it's essential. My input isn't a hobby, it's a critical component of our success. There is no golden child here. We are a unit, and every single person is valued for what they bring to the table. My personal life transformed too. I moved into a new apartment, a small sunlit place that feels like a sanctuary. It's filled with my things, my books, and my quiet. On weekends, I started rock climbing. I love the feeling of it, the intense focus, the problem-solving, the slow, steady progress up a sheer rock face. It's a challenge that is entirely my own. There's no one at the bottom telling me I'm doing it wrong or suggesting a better way. There is only me, the wall, and the strength in my own hands. For the first time, I am building a life defined by my own values and my own joy, not by the role I was assigned. I heard from a cousin a few months ago. She told me Kevin had tried to use my name, or rather my title, to secure a loan for some new venture involving tactical gear. He was apparently laughed out of the bank. She also said my parents now tell anyone who will listen that their daughter is a general doing something important for the government. I imagine them saying it with a hollow sort of pride, a desperate attempt to claim a piece of a story they had no part in writing. They are strangers to me now, ghosts who share my DNA but nothing else. Their validation is no longer the currency I trade in. Last night, I was working late, finishing up a report. My eyes drifted to a silver frame on my desk. It doesn't hold a photo of my parents or my brother. It holds a picture of my unit, taken after our last successful mission. We're all exhausted, smiling, covered in dirt, and standing together. We are a team, a family. I learned that your real family isn't always the one you're born into. It's the one that sees you for who you truly are. If you've ever had to find your own unit,